This is Andrew Vance, content writer for TRX. You're watching the TRXtv training tip. Let's get started. In this week's training tip, we're going to continue to look at this idea of proximal stability for distal mobility, and we're going to look through the lens of a specific movement, the TRX wide stance hip hinge, to examine how this idea lives on the TRX suspension trainer. So Ann, go ahead and lengthen the TRX out to mid-length. Step back with your feet wider than shoulder width apart. Okay, you're going to step forward a little bit more. And as Ann executes this movement, what she's going to be thinking about is what is stable, what needs to be stable in order to create the mobility that she's trying to generate. In the case of this movement, in her hips, her hamstrings, and her shoulders. That's where she's creating mobility. What she's keeping stable is essentially everything else. So the rest of her body is going to be turned on, engaged, very solid, and that's going to allow that mobility to occur where she wants it to occur. Now, this movement might look something like just touching your toes, which you see a lot of people do to stretch out. And when they do that, what they often do is go into a very rounded back. By unloading her weight into the TRX suspension trainer, what Ann's going to be able to do is really focus on what needs to be stable to create the mobility that she wants to create where it needs to occur. Again, in this case, in the hips, hamstrings, and shoulders. So as Ann begins this movement, she's gotten into a movement mastery mindset. She's locking her shoulders down and back. She's got her core turned on, and as she does this, her hands are just going to float out as she sticks her butt back as far as she can, almost like she's doing a deadlift. And as she comes back up, the movement is like a hip press. She's pressing her hips forward, and she's allowing her torso to be totally stable to create this mobility that she wants. Go ahead and give us a few more reps, Ann. That looks good. And as you come up, really focus on this next one, on sticking your butt back just as far as you can, letting those hands float in space. Maybe spread your hands out a little bit. Lock those shoulders down and back again for me. Go ahead and come back up. So again, this idea of proximal stability for distal mobility, a very simple concept, but it should really inform every movement, every rep, every set, every workout that you do on the TRX suspension trainer. So this is just another example of the simple concept of proximal stability for distal mobility and how you can integrate it into your training or instruction on the TRX suspension trainer. Thanks for watching the training tip. Be sure to check out the featured movement and weekly sequence, and come back next week for more free TRXtv content.